This Iceberg video starts up here with the more well-known entries. Then we head all the way down to the more obscure, surprising ones. So let's begin with Fortnite. When it was first teased back in 2011, the game was very different compared to how it is now, as it portrayed itself as a fun horror defense type. Over the next years, the art style and logo would make a change, but its most significant feature became its Battle Royale mode that helped shoot it up in popularity. Then, in 2018, they released their first licensed collaboration. To promote Infinity War, Marvel and Epic Games teamed up to bring Thanos and the Infinity Gauntlet to Fortnite. This was a huge deal at the time and was received incredibly well. So it's no surprise that Disney would once again be interested in the game, as a few months later, they promoted Ralph Breaks the Internet in the game, followed by another Avengers event the following year alongside the first licensed skins in the form of Star-Lord and Black Widow. Then of course, there was more. John Wick, Chief Hopper and the Demogorgon, Batman and Catwoman, more and more crossovers. Over time, Fortnite would solidify its place as a collaboration juggernaut, producing hundreds and hundreds of different licensed skins, emotes, showcases, and full-on events. As fun as all of this has been, I do want to note a quick personal grievance of mine that came about as a consequence of this cooperative spirit. Fortnite was the only place you could hear Emperor Palpatine's message to the galaxy, which was a pivotal point in the rise of Skywalker, as opposed to, hearing it in the actual movie. Super Smash Bros. With its first two iterations, the game's roster consisted only of Nintendo characters. It wasn't until Brawl that the series got its first third-party fighter that came as a shock to the world: Solid Snake. Given how different the Metal Gear games are compared to Nintendo titles, this was a very unexpected but welcomed surprise that would be followed up by Sonic the Hedgehog. And this would just be the start. On top of including more in-house characters, Nintendo wasn't done trying to work with other game companies. Smash 4 would include a handful of fan-favorite new license editions. And then, for Smash Ultimate, they went all out and got even more of the most desired characters, including Sora from Kingdom Hearts. The franchise follows a story where two giants collide: Final Fantasy and Disney. When the heads of Squaresoft and Final Fantasy discussed how they would counter the powerhouse that was Nintendo, they remarked how only Disney had a roster that could combat them. A Final Fantasy character designer by the name of Tetsuya Nomura would hear these discussions, and because Squaresoft and Disney of Japan were conveniently based in the same building, he would eventually run into a Disney executive in an elevator. It was this chance encounter that led him to pitch this idea, and it would result in this surprising crossover series. Beside the main character of Sora stood his loyal allies Donald and Goofy, and with each installment, the world expanded, as you'd be able to visit the most nostalgic of locations and interact with a large variety of characters from both franchises. As a result, the story itself has gotten kind of complicated. Dead by Daylight is an asymmetrical multiplayer horror game that released in 2016, and it didn't take long for it to have its very first licensed characters in the form of Michael Myers and Laurie Strode from Halloween. This was released mere months after the game launched, causing it to get a lot of attention since gamers can now hunt down others as this famed horror icon. Then, the following year, they bagged another one, Nightmare on Elm Street, followed by Saw, Ghostface, and then their first video game crossover, bringing in Bill Overbeck from Left 4 Dead. The next game license would be much more substantial with the Silent Hill update. It has earned its title as the Smash Bros. Of horror, as it collects more and more memorable franchises from film, TV, anime, and games, with its most recent being a Five Nights at Freddy's chapter DLC. By the way, if you ever want to see me play this, I stream at twitch.tv/Leas every Monday and Friday at 7 PM Central, so stop on by if you ever want to hang out. Thanks, looking forward to seeing you over there.
Finish him!
Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. For the longest time, these two characters were long-standing rivals, but they set aside their differences in 2007 for some friendly sports competition, a crossover event that would become a tradition. Aligning with the actual Olympics, we would expect a new game in the series every 4 years, and it would even extend to the Winter Olympics as well. Unfortunately, this partnership with the International Olympics Committee would end prior to the 2024 event. The reason being that they wanted to explore more, quote, profitable collaborations, such as esports and NFTs. Call of Duty has a long history of collaborations. In 2014, Ghost's Onslaught DLC brought Michael Myers into the game, who would return twice later on. Then, the Devastation DLC brought with it another icon, Predator. This trend would continue over the years and really got into motion in the 2020s as they added characters and items from various franchises, including a skin based off of Totino's pizza rolls. And sometimes, they would even include famous real-life figures. Marvel vs. Capcom. In the 90s, Capcom developed two arcade fighting games for Marvel: X-Men Children of Atom and Marvel Superheroes. These were built off the backs of Capcom's previous games, Street Fighter and Darkstalkers. So naturally, given how well received these new titles were, they knew they had to up the ante. And so, X-Men vs. Street Fighter would release to mass praise. Then, in the following year, they'd include non-mutants into the mix with Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. And the year after, the first Marvel vs. Capcom. Over time, with each iteration, its roster from both franchises would continue to grow and grow. Minecraft is no stranger to crossover DLC. While mods of all kinds do exist, the game has a ton of officially licensed packages with skins and interactive worlds. It all started in 2013 with the Mass Effect Mashup Pack, and has since grown to include more franchises, from SpongeBob to Pac-Man, Ice Age to Halo, Hello Kitty to Sonic. One of their crossovers with Adventure Time also even had a full-on televised episode set in the Minecraft universe.
So, do you have like another job, or is this what you do full time? I saw you carrying that block back there. You into building stuff?
They have also partnered up with, of all things, a luxury brand. In the Freedom to Go Beyond DLC, you can enter a world based off the Burberry fashion brand. And if you don't know what that is, that's probably because of these prices. Mortal Kombat has a history of exciting guest characters joining their roster, with the first being Kratos followed by Freddy Krueger. It would continue to bring in other horror icons such as Jason, Leatherface, Alien, and Ghostface. As for other films, they're a fan of action flicks, considering the fighters from Terminator, RoboCop, Conan, and Predator. The rest of the list of guest fighters come from both comic fame and action superhero stories, with Omni-Man and Peacemaker even being voiced by their original actors.
Back off, Cape. I pack kryptonite bullets.
Whatever kryptonite is, it doesn't scare me.
Overwatch. Its first collaboration in 2019 was with LEGO in the form of a free unlockable brick skin for Bastion. Then, when the game added a 2 to the end of its name, it started making skins based off of various franchises such as One Punch Man, Cowboy Bebop, My Hero Academia, Avatar, Transformers, and Street Fighter. They even had a partnership with the luxury car manufacturer Porsche. Astrobot. In this fun PlayStation platformer, the more you progress through the game, the more bots you save. There are over 300 bots, and practically 2/3 of them are modeled after characters from other games. While a good chunk of them are from Sony titles, there's truly something here for everyone, as these bots are more so a general celebration of gaming history as a whole, from classic hits to newer indie titles. Multiverses is a free-to-play crossover fighting game that consists of characters that fall under the Warner Bros. Umbrella. As such, there's a huge variety of fighters in its roster, including a T for Teen Jason Voorhees duking it out with your favorite cartoons. On top of that, a huge chunk of the cast is voiced by actors that have previously voiced them, bringing another level of familiarity to the game. Unfortunately, This is an example of how recognition and massive IP use isn't sustainable if the quality of the gameplay itself is lacking. Brawlhalla is another free-to-play fighting game that's amassed a pretty decent guest character list, the first being Shovel Knight in 2018. Ever since, it's added characters that fit its cartoonish art style, such as ones from Adventure Time, Ben 10, Steven Universe, and SpongeBob. As for gaming collaborations, they brought in Halo, Street Fighter, Castlevania, Mega Man, Borderlands, and many others. There's also live-action franchises like The Walking Dead, Star Wars, and even WWE wrestlers. Among Us has done quite a lot of collaborations. Given the simple art style of the game, they're pretty much just cosmetics like clothes and hats. But they've worked with other games such as Yakuza, Phoenix Wright, and even released a whole package dedicated to other indie games. The scope of the collection is even wider though, as they have DLC sets for brands like Pusheen, Hololive, and even one with the Arcane animated series. Fall Guys. If you pre-ordered the game on Steam, you would have unlocked this Half-Life skin. This is how the game started and has since gotten a lot of cosmetics. A reason for this is because the studio was bought by Epic Games, creator of collaboration giant Fortnite, and as a result, this has given the game even more access to big franchise names like Disney. Of course, they would also work with other gaming titles as well. Balatro. This addictive roguelike card building game has collaborated with other games in the form of its Friends of Jimbo editions that replace the decks with ones that are themed after their respective partnered game. Power Wash Simulator lets players relax by cleaning very grimy areas, and with its licensed DLCs, it lets them clean them for their favorite franchises. There are those that make sense, such as cleaning the Tomb Raider Manor or a special location in Midgar full of Final Fantasy items. But they do have collaborations that are a bit more out there, such as Bikini Bottom from SpongeBob and even Shrek's Swamp. Rocket League. The early years of the game was mostly made up of either small crossovers in the form of accessories such as antennas or licensed vehicles that just made sense for the game. The Sweet Tooth vehicle from Twisted Metal, the DeLorean from Back to the Future, Hot Wheels. They even got the Batmobile. Then, just like Fall Guys, the studio behind Rocket League was acquired by Epic Games, and thus the exact same thing happened. The doors were wide open for many more collaborations with bigger franchises. PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale was Sony's attempt at making a Smash-like game. While they used characters from Sony franchises like God of War, Uncharted, and Sackboy, they did extend the roster invites to third-party titles like BioShock and Devil May Cry. The various maps and items are of course based on the respective franchises involved, and to promote the game, there was even a robot chicken short made for it.
Nathan?
Do you, want to talk about it?
I'd rather not.
We got beaten by a burlap sack. It happened. We'll get him next time.
You're right. It's time to get back on the horse. Oh, sorry.
There.
This game is also referenced in God of War Ragnarok, where Mimir asks Kratos about his time in this competition.
I heard you did battle with beasts, scoundrels, princesses, the undead, automatons, and history's greatest musician. That's not true, is it?
I would not speak of this.
Apex Legends. Back in November of 2023, the game held a crossover event with musician Post Malone. Aside from a brand new game mode, it brought with it a collection of cosmetics that were created in partnership with Post Malone. Then, in January of the following year, the game had a crossover with Final Fantasy VII. It included multiple skins and guns based off of the game's characters, including an actual Buster Sword. And although it wasn't an official collab, I think it's worth mentioning that the game had an event where the cosmetics were heavily inspired by iconic anime, such as One Piece, Dragon Ball, and Naruto. Mario Rabbids was a very surprising collaboration between Nintendo and Ubisoft, given that the Rabbids franchise has not always been well received. The choice to make this first game, Kingdom Battle, a grid-based strategy type, was also interesting. But despite these factors that made many hesitant, it actually turned out to be a pretty solid and fun game. So much so that a sequel was made which had a DLC that included Rayman. Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. As the title puts it, this is a crossover fighter where characters from the two franchises duke it out. Sonya Blade versus Catwoman, Scorpion versus Batman, Sub-Zero versus Superman. That all happens here. However, this game is a lot more tame than a usual Mortal Kombat, given that there are no X-ray scenes for special moves and there's no gore whatsoever. There are even distinctions made in the fatality system where only Mortal Kombat characters and DC villains get fatalities. The heroes, on the other hand, use heroic brutalities. Based on this game's concept, the standalone Injustice series was created. These also featured Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Raiden as guest characters from Mortal Kombat. But they've had others join the roster, such as Hellboy and even the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Jump Force is a fighting game that brought together the biggest names in anime. You'd think a game like this would be a slam dunk. However, it is now infamous because of what it could have been. Its gameplay and mechanics have been heavily criticized as lackluster, and its servers would eventually close down. A result of having all of these characters, the studio had to renew their licenses every single year, and since the game wasn't profitable, it was all eventually shut down. 2B from Nier Automata gets her very own spot because of the sheer amount of collaborations she's been in. From a guest fighter in Soul Calibur, to a skin in Fall Guys, to a cosmetic set in Rainbow Six Siege, alongside many more appearances. Another reason she gets her own spot on this list is because, according to her creator, Yoko Taro, every single collaboration she appears in is considered canon to the official Nier story. By the way, if you're enjoying this video, please do consider subscribing. It really does help out a lot. Thanks.
The more dew you drink, the more double XP you get!
Mario Kart 8. This racing game includes alternative Mii costumes that represent other well-known characters like Sonic, Mega Man, and Pac-Man. But our main focus is going to be on the game's Mercedes-Benz collaboration. That's right, the drivable cars in this DLC are based off of actual real vehicles. Death Stranding had a very clear advertising deal with Monster Energy, as cans of the drink can be seen in your room. They're not just for show though, since if they're used, you get a temporary stamina boost. This tie-in doesn't make a lot of sense considering that the game takes place in a post-apocalyptic world, but then again, it is a Kojima title. In the director's cut of the game, these were replaced with Bridges Energy, an in-universe equivalent of Monster Energy. Another advertisement is tied to Sam's actor. Ride with Norman Reedus was a TV show where Reedus would travel and explore biking culture. There's this ad that shows up when you go to the bathroom, and there's even a special ride bike. And when you're out riding it, you can hear Sam say,
"This should be on an episode of Ride with Norman Reedus. Fuck yeah. This bike is so cool. It should be on Ride with Norman Reedus."
Tony Hawk's Skating has had many unexpected crossovers throughout the series, all starting with Spider-Man, followed by Darth Maul and Jango Fett. There were more superheroes as well, and even Shrek and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were invited to shred. But in regards to other video game characters, we have Doomguy, Nick Kang from True Crime, Judy and the Grim Reaper from Guitar Hero, and Graham from King's Quest. The fifth installment also had heads from Sunset Overdrive and Cuphead. Celebrities like Lil Wayne and Billy Joe Armstrong have made it in too. Thankfully, this fun collaborative spirit still seems to be alive and well, as the next game, 3+4, will have a Doom collaboration alongside a SpongeBob map. Genshin Impact. If you played this gacha game on a PlayStation in 2021, there was a surprising limited time event that allowed you to unlock Aloy from Horizon Zero Dawn. Of course, she looks a lot different given the game's anime art style, but her abilities are inspired from her own game. Although she has been a controversial addition as fans have felt she was underutilized and that the game's handling of this collaboration is why there have been no other non-Hoyoverse guest characters since. Soul Calibur has had a number of third-party fighters join its rosters. We already talked about 2B in Soul Calibur 6, but she's able to face off against Geralt from the Witcher series and Haomaru from Samurai Showdown. There are other gaming guests in the previous installments as well. Ezio from Assassin's Creed 2, Kratos from God of War, Lloyd Irving from Tales of Symphonia, Heihachi Mishima from Tekken, and even Link himself. Spawn makes the list as well, but what's interesting is that the 4th installment has multiple Star Wars characters. There's the more well-known ones, Darth Vader and Yoda, but there's also the niche inclusion of Starkiller from the Force Unleashed games. Tekken has guest characters from other fighting games like Akuma from Street Fighter and Geese Howard from Fatal Fury, but they also have 2 Final Fantasy characters in Noctis Lucis Kylum and Clive Rossfield. It also has 2 unexpected additions, manga protagonist Gon the Dinosaur and Negan from The Walking Dead, who recreates this infamous scene from the TV series, but with Tekken characters. Street Fighter. Unlike others in this genre, this one does not have any guest characters. That's why it came as a shock when Terry and Mai from Fatal Fury were announced to join the Street Fighter 6 roster. Guilty Gear is another fighting game that also doesn't have any guest characters. That was until the reveal that Lucy from the Cyberpunk Edgerunners anime will debut later on in 2025. Fatal Fury. In the latest installment, City of the Wolves, the game has gotten a lot of mixed attention for adding real-life people into the game as playable fighters. It started with famed footballer Cristiano Ronaldo, and from there, they added a much lesser-known celebrity, DJ Salvatore Ganacci. This understandably left many people scratching their heads. Hitman has done an interesting take on collaborations. They have incorporated multiple celebrity guests, but as limited time targets for you to take out. Final Fantasy XV has Cup Noodle Ramen branding in it. There's even a mission called The Perfect Cup, where the objective is basically how it sounds, and they're not exactly subtle about how much of an advertisement this is.
Then, if you take something already delicious like cup noodles and add in the finest, freshest ingredients, what do you get? The ultimate flavor experience.
They would later on also include a cup noodle hat as well. And in real life, there were limited edition cup sets that extended this collaboration. And if you were lucky, you might get some of these Ultima weapon forks. It also has a skin that lets you turn into Gordon Freeman from Half-Life. It was supposed to be a limited time item, but it was so popular that it was made permanent. They also had a collaboration event with Assassin's Creed where you can don that familiar white outfit and parkour around the town festival. Rainbow Six has a guest character in Sam Fisher from Splinter Cell, but they also have some cosmetics that are based off of other video games, such as Resident Evil, Assassin's Creed, and Dead by Daylight. They have also had a collaboration with Rick and Morty. Smite is another one of those free-to-play games that has collaborated with just about anyone that wants to. It started with a Bob Ross skin, but has since evolved to including more in-depth cosmetics and events with a range of others, such as Nickelodeon, Stranger Things, Magic the Gathering, V Shoujo, and even the heavy metal band Slipknot. Animal Crossing has had a partnership with Sanrio where multiple villagers based off of Sanrio franchises were created and distributed through amiibo cards, which would also unlock themed decor. Although all of this originally debuted in New Leaf, it's been carried over to both New Horizons and Pocket Camp. Then there's Feline, a crossover character from Monster Hunter who represents the cat partners from there. He was first introduced in Home Designer and distributed at Nintendo Zones, but he could also be unlocked in Pocket Camp if an amiibo from the Monster Hunter Stories line is scanned. And on the opposite side, in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, you can craft sets of armor for your feline that replaces them and their voice with Isabelle and Mr. Rossetti from Animal Crossing. Mountain Dew commercials. The Drink of Gamers has of course had many collaborations in their advertisements with video games, but what I want to bring to attention is when they get the characters themselves to promote the drink, such as Adler from Call of Duty taking a sip, and a Spartan from Halo talking about the double XP you could get.
At last, the one thing you've always desired, a game I had absolutely nothing to do with.
Ape Escape. In Metal Gear Solid 3, there's a Snake vs. Monkey minigame that adds stages where Snake has to get all the monkeys from Ape Escape before time runs out. This mode will also make a return in the upcoming remake. Then, in Ape Escape 3, there's a mission based off of Metal Gear Solid titled Metal Gear Solid. It's a stealth espionage with a lot of references to the inspired game, as you take control of Peepo Snake on a mission to save the real Snake. And at the end, the two of them earn each other's respects and go their separate ways. Alan Wake. The first game has a few real-life products in its world, at least in the original version. The batteries that power your flashlight are Energizer batteries. The phones run on Verizon Wireless, and there's even a short commercial that plays on a TV for it.
Want access to thousands of applications? Verizon Wireless has you covered.
Both of these brands can also be seen on billboards throughout the area. Additionally, there are multiple real-life Ford and Lincoln cars that are displayed prominently throughout the game's world. Dynasty Warriors is a game series known for putting you up against hordes of enemies, and for Dynasty Warriors Versus on the 3DS, you're able to do that while wearing costumes of Link and Samus. This wouldn't be the last time that the franchise worked with Nintendo though, as they would eventually make the Hyrule Warriors franchise that takes the main premise of the Warriors games, but set in the world of The Legend of Zelda. Super Mario Maker. The series has a lot of costumes that could usually be unlocked if you complete special courses. There are the usual ones that Nintendo partners up with, like Sonic. There are also those we've already talked about, like Sanrio, Feline, and yes, once again, Mercedes-Benz. But there are also costumes from the Japanese metal band Baby Metal, and another for Aardman Animation's Shaun the Sheep. Stanley Parable. In the original game, one of the endings has you end up in a Minecraft world. This is then followed up by putting you in Portal, where you can do a simple puzzle. Then, in the later release Ultra Deluxe Edition, you can get an ending where you end up in the Firewatch Watchtower. This is followed up by the Rocket League Stadium where you can push the ball around. On top of that, the game has multiple references to other titles throughout its story.
It was literally every game ever created. It was Skyrim, it was Persona 3, it was all of them.
Spyro and Crash. Both of these characters are now owned by Microsoft, but before this, back in the day, they teamed up to do something quite unique. Their Game Boy Advance crossover games were sold as two different versions, as players could choose to either buy Crash Bandicoot Purple or Spyro Orange. These two would also pop up in each other's games here and there after this. Skylanders was a Toys to Life game where you bought these physical sets that would unlock that character in the game. This included guest characters Spyro and Crash Bandicoot, plus Dr. Neo Cortex. There were also two Nintendo guests, Turbocharged Donkey Kong and Hammer Slam Bowser. Lego Dimensions was another Toys to Life game, but this time leveraging the popularity of Lego with the massive IP umbrella of Warner Brothers. As you can imagine, this meant that there would be a very diverse cast of characters that could be bought and unlocked. It also utilized the Lego aspect by letting players customize the physical toys, such as transferring a real-life vehicle's shape into the game. Fortune Street started off as the Japanese exclusive game Itadaki Street. It's a board game that's a combination of Monopoly and Mario Party. The characters available are from Mario, Dragon Quest, and even Final Fantasy. These were, for the most part, Japanese exclusive titles, but Square Enix would develop and release the first English title, Fortune Street, in 2007. Monster Hunter has had a large number of collaborations, enough that it could be its own video. So let's look at a few of the most notable ones. The 2010 From Software game, Monster Hunter Diary Poka Poka Iru Village, had a crossover event with Sanrio where you could unlock various Hello Kitty items. Then, in the main games, they've had crossover events such as The Witcher 3, where you gain cosmetics, powers, and even a special beast to hunt and slay. There was also this collaboration in Metal Gear Solid, Peace Walker, where Snake explores an island full of monsters from the Monster Hunter series. And there's also a special one called the Gear Rex. Additionally, they've also had collaborations with the Legend of Zelda series, where you can dress up both yourself and your Palico. Metal Gear Solid 4. This is another game where you're able to unlock an Assassin's Creed outfit to wear. Shovel Knight has 2 console-exclusive boss fights. If you're on PlayStation, you get to fight Kratos, and if you're on an Xbox, you get to face off against Battletoads. Bayonetta. On the Switch, there are multiple theme skins that could be used. Uncharted 3. To promote the game, Naughty Dog worked with Subway to make an animated promo for the restaurant.
Subway, where winners eat. Ow!
Splinter Cell has had multiple marketing collaborations. The original version had Diet Sprite vending machines. There are also multiple different brands shown throughout the game. Airwaves Gum, Nokia, AMD. And there's even a mission involving you ziplining from a roof that has an Axe body spray billboard. Burger Town is a fast food restaurant in Call of Duty that takes obvious influence from Burger King. It has appeared multiple times in various installments, so much so that for Modern Warfare 2, the game and the real-life restaurant chain teamed up to give away a themed operator skin. And on top of that, they even turned Burger Town into a real-life limited-time restaurant. Versus Capcom. This is another one of those that has so much that it could be its own video. Essentially, Capcom loves having their characters fight other franchises. They have fought the SNK cast on multiple occasions in SNK vs. Capcom. There's Tekken vs. Street Fighter featuring Pac-Man as a guest. Project X Zone has a variety of fighters from Bandai Namco, Capcom, and Sega. There's Tatsunoko, a popular anime production company, versus Capcom. They've even gone up against the Power Rangers as Ryu and Chun-Li appear in the Battle for the Grid game as guest fighters, even getting Ranger suits too.
There is blood everywhere, and he's crying!
Poker Night at the Inventory was a crossover title that starred Heavy from Team Fortress 2, Strong Bad from Homestar Runner, Max from Sam & Max, and Tico Bra from Penny Arcade. As the name implies, you're basically the 5th edition to this Texas Hold'em poker group. As you play, the characters converse with each other and there are a bunch of funny moments that happen.
Ugh, hippos, corpulent brigands. Nothing like their elegant, ungulate sisters, the giraffes.
Huh?
You know what I'm talking about. Those slender necks.
Huh?
There would also be a sequel with Claptrap from Borderlands, Brock Sampson from the Venture Bros, Ash Williams from The Evil Dead, and Sam from Sam & Max. This was largely the same as the first title, but here, GLaDOS from Portal is the dealer. This contributes to the thankfully still very strong banter and commentary throughout the game.
I probably would have raised in your situation, but I probably also would have jumped off a building, so perhaps I'm not the best source of advice.
Well, of course you won with those cards. Even Steve could have won with those cards. And all he can say is, hey-o. Shut the f*** up, Steve!
Unfortunately, when the game's developer, Telltale Games, went under, they couldn't uphold the licenses for these characters and had to delist both of these games from Steam. They have since been revived as an active business, but unfortunately, this hasn't affected these games being brought back on the market. Lost Planet 2 has a few cameo characters that act as skins. Frank West from Dead Rising and Albert Wesker from Resident Evil. There was also a collaboration event with Gears of War that let players unlock character skins. Forza, the racing game, has had collaborations with multiple other car-centric franchises. Their crossover with Top Gear includes a few cars, but most notably, has the test track from the show as a playable course. They also got the Top Gear host to present different cars. Additionally, Forza has worked with Hot Wheels to make these outlandish tracks, replicating how the real-life toy equivalent feels like. They've also had cars based off of Fast and Furious, James Bond, Barbie, Back to the Future, Jurassic Park, and Knight Rider. In terms of other games, they have the Chrysalis Rocket 69 from Fallout, a Warthog from Halo, the Regalia from Final Fantasy XV, and the Quadra Turbo RV Tech from Cyberpunk 2077. Mario Sports Mix has a few guest characters. There's the Slime from Dragon Quest, and the rest come from Final Fantasy, Ninja, White Mage, Black Mage, a Moogle, and a Cactar. Mario Hoops 3-on-3 also pretty much has the exact same guest characters with the exemption of the Slime from Dragon Quest. TMNT Smash Up. In the Wii version of the game, you're able to unlock rabbits as playable characters, one of which is themed after Sam Fisher. Pokemon Conquest is a collaboration between the Pokemon franchise and turn-based strategy series Nobunaga's Ambition. You, alongside your Eevee, set out to explore the Ransei region, which is based off of feudal Japan. Along the way, you'll face off against warriors and warlords that you can recruit for your cause after you defeat them. As for the Pokemon aspect, there are 200 available in the game and each only knows a single move. There are a lot of other different things that change up the usual Pokemon playstyle, but it's all a refreshing blend of new mechanics that work well alongside the playstyle of Nobunaga's Ambition games. Crypt of the Necrodancer is a roguelike rhythm game where you have to navigate upbeat dungeons, and it even has DLC for Hatsune Miku that brings her and her vocals to the game. It also received music from Danganronpa as well. Then, when the game was to be ported over to the Switch, the developers talked with Nintendo about a potential Legend of Zelda DLC. They were very interested in this idea, and it turned from just downloadable content to a whole new collaborative game in Cadence of Hyrule, where that core rhythmic playstyle is brought into the world of Hyrule. Everybody's Golf. The franchise has had a number of guest characters stepping up to the green. Some of these are Sweet Tooth, Gek, Jak and Dexter, Ratchet and Clank, Sackboy, People Monkey, Kazuma Kiryu, and even Kratos needs a day off. We Love Golf is another golf game that has a number of guests taking a swing in the form of costumes. Apollo Justice and Pearl Fay from Ace Attorney, Morrigan from Darkstalkers, Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins, Jill Valentine from Resident Evil, Captain Rose and Zack from Zack and Wiki, West of Barbarossa's Treasure, and a bunch from Street Fighter as well. Super Monkey Ball. These games have a wide range of guests. This includes Beat from Jet Set Radio, Kazuma Kiryu, Hello Kitty, Suezo from Monster Rancher, Sonic and Tails, Morgana from Persona 5, Axel from Crazy Taxi, Hatsune Miku, Pac-Man, the Red Angry Bird, Godzilla, and a crewmate from Among Us. Rayman Legends. On the Wii U and Switch versions of the game, you can unlock Mario and Luigi costumes to equip. Diddy Kong Racing. Banjo and Kazooie and Conker are playable racers here. What's notable about this is that this game released in 1997. The first Banjo and Kazooie game released in 1998, and the first Conker game released in 1999. Civilization. In this turn-based strategy game set in various eras, you can utilize a science fiction squad from XCOM. Ghost Recon has had 2 events where you fight alongside Sam Fisher to complete your mission. There's also the limited time Predator event where you have to hunt them and take them down before they get you. There's also another crossover boss fight in the battle against a T-800 Terminator. Team Fortress 2 has a number of items that reference other titles, but what we're going to focus on is the characters themselves. Heavy shows up as a background screen for Peggle Extreme. He's also in a storyline of Vindictus, where he's trying to return home. The PC version of Dungeon Defenders has a few TF2 characters available as familiars. The PC version of Sega Superstars includes Heavy, Pyro, and Spy as interchangeable racers. Surgeon Simulator has a level that puts you in the middle of the Meet the Medic trailer as you, as Medic, operate on Heavy. The PC version of Joe Danger has multiple TF2 riders available. The PC version of Super Time Force Ultra has Pyro and Saxton Hale. Battle Nations has TF2 units. You can race as Scout in Speedrunners. There's an engineer skin for Barrick in Paladins. And finally, they appear as Funkos in Funko Fusion. Left 4 Dead characters are seen outside of their own games. Zoe shows up as a playable character in Super Time Force Ultra. In Dying Light, you can fight off zombies as Bill. In Resident Evil 6 Mercenaries mode, you're able to play as the Left 4 Dead 2 cast, and you can even face off against the Left 4 Dead zombies here. Payday has Left 4 Dead's No Mercy map as a playable area. There's a witch jump scare Easter egg, and you can occasionally share an elevator with Bill. In collaboration with Hotline Miami, they made a heist set in the world and also added Jacket as a playable character. They would also add John Wick alongside 2 themed heists. And that's not the end of their movie crossovers, because they also have Jimmy from Hardcore Henry. On the much less serious side, there's a heist that takes place in the Goat Simulator world, and vice versa, there's a Payday-like heist in the Goat Simulator game. As for the Payday characters themselves, they have joined the cast of speedrunners and are available as costumes in Dying Light 2. World of Warcraft has a quest that's modeled after Plants vs. Zombies, where you essentially play Plants vs. Zombies. And in this quest, you can see a singing sunflower from the game. In Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock, the Lich King is a playable character. Additionally, WoW has had a few celebrity partnerships where they either add them or an iconic aspect of them in the game. Fight Night 3 has a Burger King themed event where, after completing it, you can get the Burger King himself as a trainer. SSX On Tour is a GameCube sports game where Mario and friends are able to join in on the fun. There's also Nintendo Village, a whole course themed around them. StarCraft 2. In a biolab, you can spot some Metroids in glass test tubes. Shin Megami Tensei had collaborations that featured Dante from Devil May Cry as a character you can recruit for your party. And in Liberation DX2, Dante made a return alongside Nero and V from the series' 5th installment. Funko Fusion was a game that tried to do something similar to LEGO Dimensions in that it brought together all of these franchises, but in toy form. However, it did this when the brand itself had waning popularity and the game wasn't that fun or innovative, so it didn't really go anywhere. Super Time Force. We already mentioned this one a couple of times, but it's worth bringing up again because of the rest of its inclusion of guest characters if you play on a PlayStation device. There's Sir Galahad from the Order 1886, and also the protagonist from the hit indie game Journey. Tetris. There are a lot of Tetris games, and as such, that includes a lot of crossovers. The first was Mario and Luigi in the Game Boy port, followed by a whole cast of Nintendo icons on the NES version. This would not be the end of their collaborations, as we'd get the likes of Tetris and Dr. Mario, and later, Pokemon Shock Tetris. As for non-Nintendo collabs, there's Tetris Hello Kitty and 2 Puyo Puyo Tetris games, which have Sonic and Sonic-shaped characters. Top Golf is a real-life golfing establishment, and it has teamed up with Sega to bring us the interactive Sonic the Hedgehog golfing experience we've always wanted. Skate 3 had a very close marketing collaboration with T-Mobile, as there are posters and banners plastered around with their logo. Your phone is a T-Mobile phone, they host company-sponsored tournaments, and there's even a physical store. Additionally, there's another crossover as you could shred as guest character Isaac Clarke from Dead Space. NBA 2K. If you go to the State Farm store, you can meet Jake from State Farm.
Hey, neighbor. Are you Jake from State Farm? Oh, you hang out here, bro?
Dead Rising 2 had a number of official Playboy magazine adverts scattered around. SimCity had a partnership with Nissan, where you could add a Nissan Leaf station, which would be very beneficial to your city since it had positive stats and was relatively low maintenance. Metal Gear Solid. There are a number of promotional items in the Japanese version of Peace Walker. Axe, Pepsi, Mountain Dew, and Doritos shirts, along with the cannon bag consumables themselves being found on the floor. There are also multiple real-life Japanese magazines that could be found, such as Weekly Famitsu, Dengeki PlayStation, Dengeki Games, and Weekly Shonen Magazine.
Hey.
Just Dance 3 has a dance exclusive to the Wii version, Just Mario, that lets you move it to iconic pieces of music from the franchise. Tekken Tag Tournament 2. The Wii U version had various Nintendo costumes that could be equipped on your fighters. It also had a mode that utilizes the power-ups from Mario to spice up fights. Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. We already mentioned this game and its inclusion of TF2, but it also hosts a number of other guest characters, even some that aren't associated with Sega. If you play on a Nintendo device, you're able to race as a Mii. If you play on Xbox, you could use the Xbox avatar. But its most surprising additions have to be General Winter from Company of Heroes 2, charity DLC character Simon Lane from the Yogcast YouTube, Danica Patrick, a real-life professional racer, and Ralph from the Wreck-It Ralph movies. And to this day, this collaborative spirit seems to be alive and well, as the upcoming Sonic Racing Crossworlds game is set to have multiple guest racers. Sonic Lost World. If you played on a Nintendo device, you had access to special crossover DLC. Yoshi's Island Zone puts you on Yoshi's Island, where you have to collect eggs in order to save Yoshi. And in the following year, there would be a Legend of Zelda DLC that puts Sonic in a green tunic as he explores Hyrule. Final Fantasy. We've already talked about this franchise a bit, but let's get into some of their other collaborations. In Lightning Returns, there's a Tomb Raider DLC that lets you use Lara Croft's clothes. In 13.2, you can don the iconic Mass Effect 3 NZ armor. You could also get an Assassin's Creed outfit here. In Dota 2, there's a DLC bundle that adds Chocobos and Moogles, but their most out there crossovers have to be their mobile games that have characters from Full Metal Alchemist, Deus Ex, Just Cause 3, and Persona 5. They have even featured real-life celebrities like Addison Rae, Katy Perry, and Ariana Grande, the last two having made brand new original songs for the game. Persona has had its own long list of crossovers. It had multiple themed events in Identity V where players could unlock survivor costumes from the series. The mobile RPG game, Another Eden, had an event where you could recruit Persona characters into your party. In the puzzle game Catherine Full Body, Joker is a DLC character. He's also in Fire Emblem Tokyo Mirage Sessions. As for its own games, Hatsune Miku officially exists in Persona 4. NBA Street V3 is a realistic type of basketball game that features pros such as LeBron James, but on the GameCube version, you get to play as Mario, Luigi, and Princess Peach. Indie Mashups. It is a lot easier to get access to indie game characters compared to the ones owned by big companies. As a result, we have a lot of crossovers involving them. If you're looking for a fighting game, there's Bounty Battle, Brawl Out, Fray Makers, Blade Strangers, and Rivals of Aether. As for others, the platform racer Runbow has quite a few indie characters. Blaster Master Zero has Shantae, Tunche, the couch co-op beat-em-up, has Hat Kid, and Crystal Crisis, the anime crossover puzzle game, has Isaac from The Binding of Isaac for some reason. Starlink was a Toys to Life space action game, and it fittingly had a collaboration with Star Fox. The Nintendo Switch starter pack consisted of a Fox McCloud and R-Wing Starship figures that would let you use them in-game. Vampire Survivors has a handful of guest characters that also mostly bring weapons inspired by their franchise. There's crewmates from Among Us, the Gunners from Contra, Saga Emerald Beyond, and of course, since it's a vampire game, also has a collaboration with Castlevania. Scribblenauts is a puzzle game that offers a lot of flexibility when it comes to how you want to play, as you can type in words to summon an object in the game. They had a crossover title with DC Comics, Scribblenauts Unmasked, and on the Japanese version of Super Scribblenauts, you get access to a number of Konami characters, such as Snake and Alucard. And then, the Nintendo versions of Scribblenauts Unlimited include franchise characters from Mario and Legend of Zelda. Lars, from Tekken, makes a very surprise appearance as a fighter in Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm 2. Digimon World, RE Digitize, also includes not one, but two characters from Tekken, Lily and Sebastian. It's not a one-off cameo either, because they appear multiple times in the story. Unreal Championship 2 is an arena shooter that features a guest character in Raiden from Mortal Kombat. It is kinda surreal seeing him use guns though. Dead or Alive. In the fourth installment, you get to play as Nicole, also known as Spartan 458. They're an original character, but derived from the Halo games. In Dead or Alive Dimensions, since this is a 3DS exclusive, it makes sense that it would have a Nintendo element added in the form of the Metroid Other M stage. Ripley even gets in on the action too. And then, for the 5th and 6th installment, Mai from Fatal Fury is a guest character. Battle Arena Toshinden is a 1995 fighting game where you can play as Earthworm Jim. Tom. In Sly 2 Band of Thieves, there's a cheat code you can input to unlock a special item, Tom from Toonami, who makes a bunch of noise to distract enemies.
Hey. Hey. Hey!
Sonic Dash is a mobile running game that has had collaborations with Pac-Man and Sanrio. Daemon Ex Machina is an action mech game that includes cosmetics based on Geralt and Ciri from The Witcher 3. Judge Dredd. In the Dredd vs. Death game, Red Bull is very prominently displayed throughout the world. Matrix. The movie had a promotional partnership with Powerade. They even had a commercial for a special type of Matrix bottle, so it makes sense that in the Enter the Matrix game, that partnership would be expanded upon in the form of Powerade vending machines. Obama. To promote his campaign in the 2008 election, the Barack Obama team had his face included in various EA Sports games on Xbox, as the games connected to the internet and can thus change out these ads for whoever's paying for them. This was certainly a first for a presidential campaign, and it caused a lot of discussion.
Now that's one mean piece of alien-busting hardware lovin'!
Samurai Showdown is another fighting game series published by SNK, and over the years, its characters have appeared in a number of other games, from King of Fighters to Grand Blue Fantasy to Soul Calibur 6. It's also, of course, had its fair share of guest characters, including the Warden from For Honor, Hibi Takane from The Last Blade, and Baiken from Guilty Gear. Ehrgeiz, God Bless the Ring, is an old-school fighting game that is most notable for featuring multiple characters from the Final Fantasy series. Smash Court Tennis is a sports game that has real-life athletes alongside an interesting guest roster. Raphael and Cassandra from Soul Calibur step up to the court. And that's not all from the fighting game genre, as there's also a lot of characters from Tekken, such as Yoshimitsu, Ling Xiaoyu, and Heihachi Mishima. Then there's Pac-Man himself. And aside from taking swings, there's also a Pac-Man themed court where he is the ball and he chomps up those smaller balls. Ghosts spawn into, and if you get enough points, the Pac-Man ball gets huge and the ghosts get into a panic frenzy. Trick and Snowboard. If you put in the right cheat codes, you can snowboard as characters from Resident Evil. RoboCop vs. Terminator was an early 90s run-and-gun type of game that's based off of the mini-comic series, which of course is based off of the two films. The story itself varies based on if it's played on a Super NES or not, but the basic premise is that the technology used to create RoboCop is linked to Skynet, causing the two franchise characters to clash with each other. Harvey Birdman was a detective game that had a lot of references to Street Fighter, and would even include guest character appearances from them. Diablo 3. If you played the game on the Switch, you can get an armor set that transforms you into Ganondorf, specifically his Twilight Princess look. There's also a Kuko you could get as a companion. Ninja Gaiden. Multiple characters from the franchise have made guest appearances in both the Dead or Alive games and the Warriors series. Beck from the cartoon-styled Mighty No. 9 makes an appearance as a skin. Gears 5 had a crossover with Terminator Dark Fate that allowed you to play as different characters from the film. New International Track and Field was a sports game for the DS, but it was notable for its cast of characters. You can compete as multiple different Konami characters such as Pyramid Head, Simon Belmont, Solid Snake, and even Frogger. Psyops. In this third-person shooter, if you enter a cheat code at the main menu, you're able to unlock Scorpion from Mortal Kombat. You can't really do anything special with him though, as he's essentially just a skin. Pac-Man Versus is a multiplayer Pac-Man game where one person controls him while the others play as the ghosts. And if you play on a Nintendo console, you'll hear a familiar voice commentating.
Ready? Go! Pac-Man ate the fruit,
Bye Bye Box Boy is a 3DS puzzle game where, if you use a Kirby amiibo, you can unlock a cute little Kirby skin to wear. Growtopia was an online sandbox game that has featured a few video game characters that you could play as, alongside being able to use special themed items that they brought into the world. There's characters from Rayman Legends, Assassin's Creed, and Far Cry Blood Dragon, where you can keep the dragon as a pet. Fight Night Round 2. On the GameCube version, there's a minigame that's a recreation of Super Punch-Out. If you beat it, you unlock Little Mac as a playable character for the main game. Super Grand Battle X. The Japanese version of this one-piece 2D fighting game is compatible with multiple different amiibos that unlock a variety of Nintendo-themed skins for the main cast. Battle Soccer has multiple different popular Japanese characters out on the field. Most notably, the Gundam, Ultraman, Kamen Rider, and Godzilla franchises are represented here. Fighting Vipers. The Japanese Sega Saturn has an exclusive guest character in the one and only soda mascot, Pepsi Man. Donkey Kong Country 2. This one's not really a collab, but it's worth mentioning. On Cranky's Video Game Heroes screen, there are 3 Nintendo characters on stage. In first place is Mario, followed by Yoshi and Link. But at the bottom right, there's a trash can with a sign that says, "No Hopers." Next to it are Sonic the Hedgehog's shoes and Earthworm Jim's gun. The implication being here that these two had no chance at competing with Nintendo's characters, a reflection of the rivalry between them and Sega at the time. Halo Combat Evolved. A video set in the game world was made to promote Nvidia, specifically the GeForce 2 GTS.
I'm sure glad I'm packing an NVIDIA GeForce 2 GTS. Aha!
Crash on the Run. For this mobile game, there's a very surprising advertising crossover with Domino's and their infamous mascot, Noid, who appears as a mini-boss. Phantasy Star has had collaboration events with Pizza Hut, where virtual stores pop up that you can visit. Here, you can buy pizzas, but as opposed to being, as you might imagine, consumables, they're actually used instead as swords and shields. They have also partnered up with Kentucky Fried Chicken multiple times to bring the fast food chain into the game. And after speaking to Colonel Sanders, you can actually summon him to assist you during a fight. EverQuest 2. In an attempt to stand out from World of Warcraft, who was dominating the MMO scene, EverQuest partnered with Pizza Hut. In the game, if you were to type in /pizza, it would take you to their website where you could order some. This did wonders for the game's marketing as multiple news outlets reported on it, alongside a jab from Jay Leno. This advertising crossover was so successful that Pizza Hut actually got upset at it, because if you were to type in their name in Google, the top results at the time would not be their website, but rather EverQuest 2 and /pizza.
Bomber Man will never know what hit him.
Niche fighters. If you haven't noticed by now, fighting games are full of crossovers, and there are so many smaller niche ones that, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to organize them into this one neat entry. So let's quickly look over a few. BlazBlue Cross Tag Battle features characters from various smaller franchises, but it most notably has characters from both Ruby and Persona 4 Arena. Fighters Megamix mostly features a roster derived of characters from Virtua Fighter 2 and Fighting Vipers. However, there are some odd inclusions here. Bark the Polar Bear and Bean the Dynamite are anamorphic animals that come from the fighting game Sonic the Fighters. There's also Hornet, a car from Daytona, USA. Instead of voice acting, it makes typical car sounds. DreamMix TV World Fighters brings together characters from Hudson, Konami, and the Takara toy line. That's how we can have Bomberman, Solid Snake, and Optimus Prime all in the same game. Varth Operation Thunderstorm is an old-school arcade shooter where, for some reason, Ryu will pop up and perform a Shoryuken. Shooting at him gives you power-ups. Mod Nation Racers has a few Sony characters. There's Kratos, Ratchet and Clank, Nathan Drake, Sackboy, Sly Cooper, and Sweet Tooth. but it also has a unique advertisement crossover in Flow from the Progressive Insurance commercials. There's also the Canadian exclusive character Froster that can only be obtained by purchasing a Froster, the Canadian equivalent of a Slurpee, at a Mac store. Jurassic Park. The theme park sim Operation Genesis has vending machines that depict Sunkissed and Hawaiian Punch in clear view. Halo 4 King of the Hill, fueled by Mountain Dew, was a 2012 mobile game where the gameplay was made up of location-based King of the Hill matches, where the hills were real-life 7-Eleven stores. In order to level up in the ranks at a specific hill, you would need to buy special Halo Mountain Dew or Doritos and enter a code you get from them. Doing this lets you unlock special items on Halo 4. Christmas Nights was a holiday-themed demo disc for the Nights into Dreams game. Sonic makes an appearance in a minigame where you could use him to freely explore areas you've already been through. In the end, he fights Eggman, who is essentially just a reskin of a previous boss. Wario Blast is a crossover game between Wario and Bomberman. Your goal depends on who you play. Wario is, of course, trying to plunder Bomberland, and it's up to Bomberman to protect it. Pac-Man Fever was a party game that featured guest characters from Tekken, Soul Calibur, and Ridge Racer. Konami YY World is a platformer game that brings together multiple Konami properties, and at the time, this included both King Kong and Mikey from the Goonies. Sim City. On the NSES, there was a type of disaster event called Bowser Attack, where he rampages through the city looking for Mario and Luigi. This causes fires to break out alongside the devastating damage he inflicts. Sega Ga Ga is a 2001 RPG with an interesting premise. Essentially, you play as a Sega worker who is desperately trying to help the company get ahead in the console wars. Their main competitor, Dogma, owns 97% of the console market, and it's up to you to gather allies to defeat them. In-game, you have 3 years to save the company, and you have to use that time wisely, as everything from the type of games your teams produce to the game's ending depends entirely on your actions. Of course, the story includes multiple appearances from popular figures, such as Sonic himself. Ryu Number is a concept that's based on just how many things Ryu from Street Fighter has been in. Think of any character right now. Go ahead, think of any. There's a good chance that that character in your head is only a few degrees of separation from Ryu. For example, Sadako Yamamura from the Ring movies is in Dead by Daylight alongside Leon Kennedy. Leon Kennedy is in Project X Zone 2 alongside Ryu. It really is a deep rabbit hole that I encourage you to explore. Now, I'm sure there's something that I missed, so if you have anything to add, please share your knowledge down in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.